So ladies and gentlemen, please join me in welcoming our school superintendent and my friend, Alberto Carvalho.
Good afternoon. Thank you very much for that very kind introduction, Dennis Scholl with Knight. I tell you, Jim Gaser and New World School of the Arts and the remarkable young man, M.E.N., and one single woman, Francesca, who held her own and showed them off. Now, I brought some prepared remarks, often written by my staff, to address you, but once again, after being totally inspired by the music, I'm not going to use them. I choose to speak from the heart about that which is so evident before our eyes. You know, anytime we talk about the arts and education, the importance, the existential importance of art and culture in our communities, it's one element that transcends anything that needs translation. You don't need Google Translator. You don't need a dictionary to understand it because it speaks directly to your heart, not just to your mind. It awakens senses that you didn't know exist. And at the end of the day, I believe it brings us closer together than we were before. That is why my journey as superintendent in this community over the past 4 years, a community during a time marked by the worst economic recession any one of us has seen. All of you come from different places across our country. You've seen it in your own districts, in your own communities. The ravages of financial conditions that have in many ways obliterated and eliminated that which is so important in the lives of our children. The motivation, the inspiration, the passion, compassion of the existence of arts and music in schools. And unfortunately, across our country, at the hands of decisions that are not values-driven, certainly not child-centric, they are the first victims of the budget casualty. First ones to go, first ones to be cut. And I speak to you not only as a superintendent, but also as a father of a 21-year-old daughter who was a musician in school. And I tell you this, the remarkable thing about my daughter, her name is Alexandra, is I never saw her rushing out of the house in the morning, you know, taking the last bite of bagel, you know, yelling out to me, "Dad, I just have to make it to school. I can't finish breakfast," because, you see, in algebra, we started these differential equations yesterday, and I just want to get back to it. I want to finish it. It's so exciting. But here's what I saw. I saw her losing sleep, get up early in the morning, go to bed late at night, because from my bedroom I could hear music. I could sense the inspiration, the significance, the dignity, the worth that activity brought to her life. Simply put, she told me, my music is me. It is a part of me. It is not something separate from me. Cutting it out of my existence is amputating part of my soul. So whether it's inspired by my own daughter's experience and testimony or what we saw on stage here today, arts and music programs in our schools and in our communities, the existence, the promotion of culture, not only as a moral imperative, but as an economic necessity, you can ask Michael Spring to tell you that, are ideas that we cannot compromise on. Now, I know probably I'm the least suited person to address you. You as Grantmakers in the arts, what right have I, other than one of extreme need? And I'll leave you my address, my name, my school system name. You can write checks on your way out, because we are indeed a district and a community in need. But here's what we're also. We're also the promise of America. You'll have a chance to visit different sectors of our community. You'll see extreme diversity. And with diversity, in my heart, I believe, lies opportunity. You see, demographers tell us that 15 years from now, America will be the face of Miami today. So cracking the code of opportunity, eliminating the digital divide, eliminating the artistic divide, eliminating the opportunity gap in Miami is cracking the code of success for our nation. And we can do it in a noble, dignified way. Not scapegoating through cheap assaults those who chose to come to this country or were forced to come to this country. So scapegoating the economic woes of our nation on immigrants is a farce. We've seen that approach take place elsewhere at a different time in America and elsewhere at a different time in the world. It doesn't work. We shouldn't also scapegoat the economic ills of America on those who have built America, on those who have inspired America. Right now, as you read the papers across the country, it seems that everything that is wrong with America and Americans is the responsibility and the fault of those who, second to our parents, inspired us. Teachers. You see, when I see Jim Gazer come up on stage, and he is a teacher, he is a master teacher. But what makes him a remarkably great teacher is the fact that once he inspires, he knows how to leave the stage and pass that baton of opportunity to his students. And I was looking at the students performing, at the same time looking at Jim, and Jim had his eyes closed and he was just rocking to the beat of the music. And I know deep in his mind and his heart, he is humming to himself, "Aren't they great?" And what we say to Jim and teachers like him across America is, "Aren't you great? Aren't you great? Aren't you the perfection of greatness?" Two things struck me as I walked in here today to Eden Rock. I mean, an appropriate place, right, to celebrate arts and music and the financing of arts and music in communities. I mean, this is one of those hotels during segregation when Sammy Davis Jr. used to come to perform and then have to be escorted out because he could not sleep here on the beach. The greats of Frank Sinatra. And today we see young men and a young lady who, without showing any identification, any papers, can come here and demonstrate their craft, their inspiration for us all. You see, that is what America is all about. It's about this confusing soup of aspirations and ideas, all coming together at the same time. And out of it, something great emanates. You see it materialize in a form and a shape and the sound of these young men and women. You see it in the classrooms across our community. But what you see is the true belief that because of what teachers and education does or do, something better will be created, the better America, a more compassionate and understanding America, a better place for us all. Not an America of dissension or conflict, but an America of harmony. Speaking of harmony, this was harmonious, what took place on stage today. It almost reminded me of the presidential debate that will take place tonight at 9 o'clock. The second thing that impressed me was as I walked into this hotel, people so quickly put you into buckets. So they looked at me, a fairly young guy, I think, unless you ask my daughter. Fairly young guy, and the guy opens the door for me and says, "Are you here for the investment bankers conference?" And he looks up and down at me, and I said, "No, I'm here for the Grantmakers in the arts." And again, looks up and down at me as if there's something wrong with me. So I got up here and I realized, yeah, I'm not appropriately dressed. You're cool and hip, relaxed and rested, and I'm in my monkey suit. And then, of course, living up to the true sentiment across America and perhaps the world that starving artists are first and foremost starving, I realized that this is a luncheon event and the only thing you have in your tables is water. And I'm being given the task of actually speaking to you for 20 to 25 minutes, I was told. Speak for 25 minutes about the importance of arts and music in education. And by the way, they are starving. I'll tell you. But let me reflect on a couple of things. Because hopefully what I say to you is of little importance unless there's a little seed that's planted. And look, I'm not a musician. The one thing I play the best is the radio. But I absolutely understand and I'm inspired by the arts. And because I am so inspired by it and because I am so convinced that the gaze I see in young boys and girls' eyes every single day when I go into schools, and I see them rushing into their classes, and I see the performances on stage, I am absolutely convinced that values-driven approach to education is important. And I'll leave you with a couple of thoughts. I was appointed in 2008, as I said, during the darkest of all economic times that any one of us lived through, second only to the Great Depression of the 30s. Many people who do what I do opted for the easy way out. They looked at the importance of STEM, science, technology, engineering, and mathematics. And look, this is coming from somebody who taught physics and chemistry and calculus, both in high school and college. They look at the importance of the Common Core and the importance of the core subject areas and standards-driven education and accountability, where everything needs to be tested for it to be real and have importance. And then we concern ourselves so much with the employability of our kids. And then we compare our kids' performance across states, even though the tests are all different. And then we teach to the test, and then we decide to compare ourselves to nations across the globe who are fascinating by the folks in Finland and Singapore, as if I ever want to live in Finland or Singapore. And then what we bring back, and we tell our kids, and we convince ourselves is that somehow we've lost our way, that we are no longer any good, that the best days of America are past us, that somehow we need to bequeath our legal and moral right of believing in children for who they are, with all of their inspiration and imagination, that somehow they're little robots, little widgets that we can program to spit out on time everything that we believe is important for them to know. Well, I decided 4 years ago that we should take the road less traveled, because insanity sometimes is contagious. And if you don't believe me, wait until November 6th. We have allowed ourselves as a society, as a nation, to be hijacked, not by values and moral principles, not by ethics or philosophical pronouncements that have been dissected and analyzed. We've allowed ourselves as a nation to be hijacked by a minority of thinkers that believe that by imposition, they will get to dictate what we like, who we like, how we love, who and what we love, and when to do it. That is not the reason why I decided to become an American. You see, I'm an immigrant into this country. I so believe in what I do as a public school educator that I need to pass this baton on to those that will follow me. I often speak of my parents. By the way, my father was a musician. He played the guitar. My parents, they both had 6 years of schooling. That's together. Neither one of them got past 3rd grade. I was born in a very poor country in Portugal. Family of 6, the only in my family to graduate high school. The only one to be able to go to college, but to do so, I had to work on a cruise ship scrubbing decks for 8 months. The first $1,000 I got, after 8 months, I bought a ticket to New York City. I had to convince the folks in the American Embassy that I was nothing but a tourist wanting to visit the Great Apple, the Big Apple. But I knew better. Now, these were different times in America. Nobody asked me for any papers. I'm still trying to get arrested in Arizona. I came to this country, I landed in New York City, and about 2 hours later, I had a job. Slicing potatoes, dicing tomatoes, scrubbing pots and pans in the back kitchens of a restaurant in Manhattan. And after crisscrossing America, 38 states in less than 1 year, by far exhausting and expiring my visa, scrubbing decks, cleaning kitchens, laying asphalt and doing roofing, as a day laborer, as a construction worker, as anything that would get me one step closer to the journey I wanted to have. Always with dignity, always looking for the next great opportunity. Thinking of my parents and their 3rd grade education. Thinking about the way my father would prop the guitar on his knee and play as my mom sung. And that resonated with me every single day. It reminded me that there are things that are far more important than that which is written on the book or is placed on the test that we force our 3rd graders to take. That which comes from the heart, the tradition, the culture, are so critically important the way we raise our children, that it cannot be forgotten. I remember those days. I remember them becoming a teacher, going to school. I remember finally, growing in the ranks of the administration, and then one day, somebody promotes me to an assistant superintendent. Big thing in our community, assistant superintendent. And I remember calling my home proudly to tell my father, great musician, but he was the equivalent of a custodian. I called my father and said, Dad, I just became an assistant superintendent. That's my new job. And my father, with some hesitation, says, well, that's great, son, congratulations. I hang up the phone. About 5 minutes later, my youngest brother, who I helped put through school and is today an oral surgeon, calls me, and he says, listen, that was fantastic, but you have to understand that when you told Dad you had just become an assistant superintendent, he was quite sad. And I said, why is that? Why was Dad sad? I just got a great promotion. And he says, well, maybe you've forgotten your Portuguese a little bit, but the translation of superintendent into Portuguese is the equivalent of the guy who runs the elevators, the elevator conductor, so to speak. And Father was happy, but he was somewhat disappointed because he turned to me and said, I know your brother is very happy, but couldn't he at least be the conductor himself? I mean, he has to be the assistant to the conductor of the elevator. And in that moment, I realized what a beautiful father I had. How simple his conclusions, but how much he loved me no matter what. And folks, as much as we laugh at our own existence these days in America, as much as we try to be somebody else, and I really have this issue with these international rankings that are on commercials all over TV, where America somehow is middle of the road, because as Americans we should be number one at everything, and how somehow our parents and grandparents were better than the kids who are in school today. I don't think so. I can't do what they do. In fact, they are far smarter than we were when we were their age. They are the digital natives. We are, at best, digital immigrants, illegal digital immigrants. No papers for that. They are so complex of an individual. We think that they are confused and they can't pay attention. They are demonstrating to us today that they can multitask at many different levels, the likes of which we can't. They are resourceful. We spent our lives memorizing to demonstrate ability to repeat knowledge. They have shown to us that they can access knowledge quickly, saving time for other things and more things. They master so much so quickly. And yet we repress them into this industrial revolution style of schooling, 180 days a year, 7 hours and 20 minutes every day. Everybody starts at the same time, ends at the same time, and in between, you have to deal with annoying as hell bells every 60 minutes. You eat at a certain time, whether you're hungry or not. There's a better way of doing it. That is why over the past 4 years, we decided to take the road less traveled. Let me tell you very quickly what we did and what we didn't do. Number one, even though we lost $2 billion in funding as a result of the calamitous set of economic conditions, we didn't fire a single teacher for economic reasons. Only district in urban America did not do so. Second, not only did we not reduce arts programs, music programs in schools, we actually augmented it. We opened 36 new magnet programs. 1/3 of those are visual arts and performing arts related. New Conservatory of the Arts, new programs across the entire district. For we know that equally important to science and math, the 3 R's of education, reading, writing, and arithmetic, is the R of art. That which requires no translator for it to be understood, for it speaks directly to our souls. During this time, we also show the rest of the world how music can actually improve math scores. We decided to not eliminate the opportunity that underserved communities, those who are mainly composed of immigrants and poor children, who coming to schools are low performing, and our solution across America is, you know what, let's take out the elective programs, let's put more math and science and reading to catch them up. And how boring. 7 hours and 20 minutes of math and reading. And that's the picture across America more and more. There's a better way. There's a more respectful way, if in fact we dare to put children at the center of our attention. So we decided to take the road less traveled. My friends, today we stand as not only one of the highest performing urban districts in America. In fact, the Nobel Prize in Urban Education is going to be announced next week in New York City by the Broad Foundation. Out of 15,000 districts for the 4th year in a row, we are one of 4 finalists for that prize. We have the highest graduation rate ever in the history of our district. We are ranked right now in terms of Hispanic students, and our community is by and large Hispanic, 64%. Highest ranking across the nation for Hispanic American achievement out of 15,000 districts, 7th in the nation for African American students out of 15,000 students. Our inner city high schools, which 5-6 years ago were failing, and they had been failing for years with graduation rates of 30 to 40%, are now schools that have some of the highest graduation rates in the state of Florida. They all jumped from Fs to As, and the graduation rates now are as high as 80 to 85%. Miracles are possible, but then again, you should not be surprised, because you saw some here today. Just in my world, we cannot put children before Hobson's choices. It cannot be math or music. It cannot be an either-or proposition. It needs to be a both-and mandate. It's math and music. So I leave you with a couple of thoughts, and maybe a joke. And by the way, I really don't know exactly what most of you do, but I want to do what you do. Because to listen to jazz, around 11:30, 12, three sets, right? Pretty cool. Drink water as much as you can. And you've been very good, because I don't see anybody getting up to go to the restroom after all that drinking. But here's what I believe. I often go into schools, and I'm always reminded of this story of a 3rd grader at a school that I visited not long ago, one of these elementary schools, very poor school, in Liberty City. How many of you know where Liberty City in Miami is? There's 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Oh, all the students know where Liberty City is. So this is one of the schools that I inherited as an F, and in just a few months we turned the school from an F into an A. Now, it took a whole lot. Even though we didn't fire a single teacher for economic reasons, we certainly have not renewed teacher contracts on the basis of how well they teach, recognizing the conditions in the environment, demographic conditions, poverty, disability, language. But at some point, we ought to consider the needs of children side by side with the needs of the adults who teach them, right? And we change a lot in these schools. I changed about 64% of all principals in Miami-Dade, staggering number. And yes, changed about 6,000 of the teachers. Now, you didn't read about this on Time magazine, because I don't think that we need superheroes to cure the ills of public education in America, nor should you take dramatic actions to propel yourself in stardom. The job you do should always be less important than the work that you represent. So I remember going to this school, Liberty City Elementary, F to A, and as a result, we had a lot of things to celebrate. The kids performed in an outstanding way, the teachers. And I walked up to the cafeteria, and I announced to the kids that as a result of their extremely impressive performance, that we had brought a cartoon character, Doki, from Discovery Channel, and the kids went crazy. And then we announced to them that there was going to be a financial incentive to the school as a result of their performance, about $13,000 for supplies, for all kinds of things. And the kids got really excited. And when I told them that we're going to bring them a pizza, they really brought the house down. So more important than cartoon characters or money, pizza. When I told them there was pepperoni in the pizza, they went nuts. So after the festivities, I was walking up and down the cafeteria, and I was shaking hands with the kids. And they're all very happy. They know kids. They got tomato sauce in their hair, pepperoni, by their ears. They're all very happy. I'm shaking hands with the kids, walking up and down, and I come upon this one boy. And TJ. And TJ shakes my hand, but then he doesn't let go of my hand. He holds on to my hand. And this is one of those moments, whether you're a teacher or a parent or just a human being, a decent human being. You don't pull away, don't recoil. So I let his hand rest in mine, and I decided to sit next to him. And TJ is an absolutely happy kid. He's eating pizza. And he says to me before I even ask him anything, he says to me, I'm so happy today. And I said, TJ, why are you so happy? And he says, because I got pizza. Duh. But then he says, I'm going to go to the beach. Now, this was the end of the school year. Liberty City. I'm going to go to the beach. And I said, TJ, that's great. Do you like the beach? Now, this is a third grader. A third grader, I know most of you have forgotten those years. You're about 9 years old in Miami. Liberty City is less than a mile away from the bay. Kids in Liberty City smell the balmy breeze that comes from the ocean through the bay. They smell the salty air. They see billboards by the highway above their meager little homes and projects, billboards that announce beautiful Miami Beach where Kim Kardashian and her tribe hang out all the time. They see these fancy cars drive by on the highway above them. And what AJ said to me when I asked him, do you like the beach? His AJ said, I don't know, I've never been. The opportunity gap in Miami-Dade, the opportunity gap in our country needs to be dealt with. It's not just about teaching the core subject area, it's about elevating children, hoisting them upon our collective shoulder so they can see a horizon that stretches out far beyond what they see from where they're born or where they grow up and live. That is the power of education. And that is the collective power of social investors like you who understand the need, understand the significance of dignity, and promote it every single day. It's about TJ. It's about them. It's about our country. Easy, cheap political pronouncements will not bring about solutions. Copying Finland or Singapore would be a dramatic departure from our tradition, the nation of innovation. The true belief that somehow we should not follow in the footsteps of a second-rate imitation of anybody else. We should have the courage to reinvent America into a better version of itself. But we can only do it if we believe. And you see, I believe I have a little bit of a right to say this because I am in the industry of belief. Trust me, I see it, I touch it every single day. They walk in and they are mesmerized by the world before them and the opportunity, the experience that we build for them every single day. That is what we do. That is the nation we want to be. And you as partners are critically important to redefine who we are and to invent a better America. I leave you with one quick story because there's got to be a story about the arts that maybe is not as dramatically sensitive as the one I just told you. But this is a true story, or so I'm told. So there's this artist that has his first exposition in a gallery here in Wynwood, a very cool area. And the artist is there at the end of the evening, not much traffic, so he's a little worried. He goes up to the gallery owner and he says, so how did it go? Did I do well? And he says, well, I have good news and bad news for you. And he said, okay, tell me. He says, well, the good news is that somebody came up to me during your show and asked me if I believed, as the gallery owner, that the paintings, your art, would go up in price, would appreciate after your death. And I said, I really didn't know, but I said, of course, no doubt, this is great art. Once the artist dies, the prices will skyrocket. And he said, that's great, because I sold them all 15 pieces are all sold to this guy. He says, that's great news, what's the bad news? He says, well, he was your doctor. So my friends, let me leave you with this. See, that's what happens before you have lunch, is that, let me leave you with this. There's a famous quote that I always close my comments with, and it was pronounced over 50 years ago. It speaks to me as loudly today as it did back then. And it goes along the lines that the arc of history bends towards justice. It was written and spoken by a teacher, a leader, a preacher, Dr. Martin Luther King. And to me is one of the most important quotes of all time. The arc of history bends towards justice. That there's this natural alignment of things, of functions, of thoughts, of ideas, the evolution of mankind towards justice. And I think that I can rephrase it today slightly differently with the same meaning, is that the art of history forces justice. The art of history forces justice. It is about honesty. It is about nakedness of thought. It is about inspiration. It is about passion. It is about compassion. And those do not happen on the cheap or for free. They happen because people of goodwill carve out common ground around what's important, particularly for young men and women. That is our future. That is our destiny. And if we do it right, that shall be our legacy. I do believe fundamentally we cannot be the first generation of Americans that will bequeath to the generation that will follow us a quality of life inferior to the one we benefit from today. We need to pass it up. We need to do better for them. Thank you very much. Enjoy Miami.